Shilakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svabhadachitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddhapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Chaitanya Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dekshanarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyadevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Honorable Vice Chancellor of the National Law School, Professor G. Bhakti Rao, although he has just stepped out, Professor Subbarao, Professor Sriram Bhatt, Aranya, Vice President CSPA, Bhakti Narayan, and all the students here. I am extremely happy that I have the opportunity to be amongst you this afternoon to speak on a topic which, as the Honorable Vice Chancellor indicated, is a very, very important topic in this day and age. And it's important because it is conspicuous by its absence and because of the dire need for ethics and values in life in the modern times. Ethics and values have always been important in human society, but arguably it is very, very important today because we see everywhere there is confusion, there is demoralization, there is a frustration, a sense of hopelessness and despair at the way at which values and morals and ethics are crumbling like a pack of cards all around us. We need to really revisit the whole idea of the need for ethics and values and how we can go about re-establishing them in our society. We've all heard the saying, if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. But if character is lost, everything is lost. But today we seem to have a situation where the exact opposite is the formula that people seem to follow. If character is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. And if wealth is lost, everything is lost. So times have changed so much that we need to really think very, very deeply about the way in which our lives are moving and the way in which our society is moving today. When we speak of ethics and values, we are speaking of a set of principles that govern behavior and actions and attitudes. We are speaking of a set of morals, a set of do's and don'ts that guide our conduct in society, in our private life as well as in public life. And they govern every part of our life. It's not just that the ethics and values are necessary in our professional life. We are integrated human beings. We are integrated wholes. We are not compartmentalized individuals. who are one thing at work, another thing at home, another thing in the outside world. So it is so important for us to reflect on these issues, because these ethics and these values and these principles make up who we are. We are what our values are. We are the sum and substance of everything we stand for in terms of our morals and ethics and values. We are simply not what we appear physically. We may dress in a certain way or speak in a certain way, come from a certain land and so on. But these are just external appearances. They have their place in life, undoubtedly. But more importantly, we need to consider what it is that we are made up of. What is the stuff, or what is the substance of which we are made. Now, as far as the values of life are concerned, you've all heard the saying, one man's food is another man's poison. So what is good for you may not be good for me. What is bad for you may not be bad for me. So how does one go about establishing any set of ethics and values that is meaningful and that can be understood and accepted across the board by different categories of people in the society? That's where the challenge comes. Ethics and values is something we all have a gut feeling about. We all have some understanding that this is right, that is not right. We all know, for example, that it's not good to steal. We all know, we have that feeling and the understanding it's not good to speak a lie. We know inside us that it's not good to be cruel or harsh to someone unnecessarily. So we know these things. But we see that despite knowing these things, one becomes indifferent. One becomes callous. And despite knowing that these things are not right, we go ahead anyway because what we perceive as a benefit is too great in terms of a loss of giving up a certain small principle like this. So therefore we end up sacrificing principles and values and ethics at the altar of expediency and money and happiness and progress of this world. Because I consider making it big in this world, making money and becoming a big person, having a big house, a big car, a lot of money to spend and enjoy. We consider these things as the things of value, so we are willing to pay any price for it. Even if that price is that we give up some of these principles and values that our society has cherished for centuries and centuries. Perhaps it's the values with which we were brought up from childhood. But when we are exposed to the harsh world outside, where it's a world of cutthroat competition, our views change. And we somewhat feel compelled to move along with the current of this world. We are in the rat race, so to speak. You see, the problem with the rat race is that even if you win, you are still a rat. So one needs to really think very deeply about the significance of this rat race. Where is it taking us? What is it doing to our sense of values and overall to our sense of well-being? Today, things are taken for granted that would be quite shocking for people who lived maybe 50 years ago or even 30 years ago. And perhaps by the time you become older in your life, perhaps enter into your 50s, you will find people in their 20s and their values to be quite shocking. And that's the way the world is moving, at a very, very rapid pace. A pace that is driven and fueled by materialism. Materialism means that you consider only the material things of this world important. And what are the material things? The material things are money, the pleasures of this world, prestige, power, the comforts and luxuries that money can bring, because we think these things are valuable. And therefore, we are willing to do anything for it. With materialism becoming so rampant everywhere, with materialism becoming the modern mantra, everyone wants to make it big. The razzle-dazzle culture of this world is so powerful, so overwhelming, so overbearing, that it is hard for an ordinary person of this world to not get affected by it. And you all become mesmerized by the display of the glitter and glamour, the razzle-dazzle of the materialistic world outside. The lure of this modern materialistic culture is extremely powerful. So when we speak of ethics and values and principles, we also need to consider more fundamentally what it is that we want to do in life and what we want to make of our lives. Do we think that the kind of life we are leading now is going to provide a sense of harmony and well-being? What is the meaning of having ethics in our lives? What kind of dilemmas are we talking about? Usually the dilemmas that face people are not ethical dilemmas in the sense of one ethical principle being confronted with another ethical principle, but usually it is one ethical principle in front of a materialistic principle driven by greed or lust or anger or envy or pride or something like that. In this world, in this connection, this very story of Kaushik, there happened to be a discussion in Calcutta many years ago between the famous poet Rabindranath Tagore and Bankim Chandra. Have you heard of these two personalities? So Bankim Chandra took the view that Krishna was right, that the sage Kaushik should have spoken a lie, and he did a mistake by speaking the truth. Whereas Rabindranath Tagore held the view that my respected senior Bankim Chandra is wrong. A lie is always a lie. A lie can never be a truth in any circumstances. And Rabindranath held that what Kaushik should have done is he should have said, I know the answer, but I won't tell you. And then Bankim Chandra responded to him and said, yes, that's very possible, but is it probable? In other words, what Rabindranath said was not practical, it was not realistic, it's not something that can be applied in day-to-day life in an easy way. So when it comes to ethical dilemmas in our life, and you're going to face more than your fair share of them in your life as a lawyer and also as an individual, we'll have to keep these things in mind. That moral obligations are of different kinds in this world. As a lawyer, you will have, or a judge or anything, as any professional, you will have moral obligations to your clients, to your colleagues, to your superiors, to the courts, to the government, to the people, to your family, to your friends, to the society at large, to the environment, for example. So we have innumerable obligations to entities around us. And very often we will find that our obligations to two or more of these entities come into conflict. So I am supposed to do one thing, I'm morally obliged to do one thing to somebody. But if I do that, then I end up doing something that is harmful to the other person, and I violate my moral obligation to the other person. And this kind of situation will come very frequently in life. Perhaps you have also experienced such things. A clash of your values, a clash of your morals. So how do you resolve such situations? Many times in your profession you're going to face it, and also in your personal life. Now, as a professional, you will have to deal with so many things in a practical way. At the same time, if you do not keep principles and values right there above, on the forefront of your life, as the guiding light of your life, what is going to be the difference? What is going to be the impact on the world and on your life? A human society that is devoid of principles and values is no better than an animalistic society. It may sound a little harsh, but I think you will agree with this. Just imagine a society where people didn't have any morals, any values, and a free-for-all was ensued everywhere. Just imagine the condition of the society, where the principle of might is right prevails, where the principle of everything for me and nothing for others prevails. What kind of a society are we going to have? So naturally, for the existence, the harmonious existence and well-being of the society and its individual constituents, we need a very well-formulated system of ethics and values and principles. And for these principles and values, we need to draw on our traditions and on certain cherished values which have stood the test of time. Let me tell you another little story from our tradition. And this time the story is from the Ramayana. Of course, you all heard of the Ramayana and you all know the storyline. After Lord Ram had defeated Ravana, Hanuman was sent by Ram to go to Sita, who was in the forest, held captive by the representatives of Ravana. And as Hanuman reached there, he had earlier come before one time, before the battle began, and he had seen how the representatives of Ravana were tormenting her and harassing her. So Hanuman this time after the battle came and gave the good tidings that Ram has killed Ravana, and very soon he will come and take you back from here. Sita was overjoyed to hear this. In the meanwhile, Hanuman said, "Please tell me, should I kill all these ogresses who were here tormenting you for all these days? Just give me the green signal, just give me the yes word, and I will destroy them in a moment." And Sita said, "No, you shouldn't do that. And let me tell you a story." So she told Hanuman a beautiful story, very instructive story. One time there was a hunter, and he was moving around in the forest, and he lost his way, and as his luck would have it, he was chased by a tiger. When a tiger chases you, you run as fast as you can. So he did exactly that. He ran for his life, and when he found that the tiger was running much faster than him, the only alternative he had was to climb a tree. So he scampered up a tree as fast as he could, just in the nick of time. And the tiger leapt, but he missed him by a hair's breadth. And the tiger was cursing his fate, that I've lost my dinner for today. And the man was thanking his stars. He rushed up, and as soon as he reached up, he came straight into the arms of a bear. a big bear who had made the tree his home. So he came right into the arms of the bear. So down there was the tiger, and here there was the bear. So fortunately for the man, the bear said, "Don't worry, you just be here. You look very frightened. You have taken shelter of this tree, which is my home. So it is my duty to protect you. Don't worry, I won't harm you. You can just be here." So the man was so tired and exhausted, and the fear of being chased by the tiger was so overwhelming that out of sheer exhaustion, he fell asleep in the arms of the bear. Now the tiger was prowling all around the base of the tree, moving round and round the tree. And then the tiger was becoming hungry, so he addressed the bear and said, look here, tiger, the man is sleeping. Let's talk one-on-one between us. It's just between us. Keep these human beings out of the picture for the time being. You see, the human is our common enemy. He hates us. He always works against our interest. And he's coming here to hunt us. But you and I are brothers. So let's help each other. He's there in your arms. Just push him down. I'll do the rest. And I promise you protection after that. So after I have had him as my dinner, then you can go on and you can be free in this forest and I won't harm you anymore. So let's sign this deal. And we also have some nice lawyers from the National Law School who will make our agreements so that everything will be fine and we won't violate these terms. So the bear replied, he said, "My dear tiger, I can't do that. I have given my word to this human that I will protect him because he has taken my shelter. So I cannot betray this person." So the tiger was a little unhappy to hear this, but nevertheless, he was hoping against hope that something would happen in the near future. In the meanwhile, the man woke up from his slumber, feeling a little refreshed. Meanwhile, the bear had been tired, so he fell asleep. The wily tiger now looked at the human. Just come aside. Now between you and me, see, you're a human and I'm a tiger. We are friends. So let's strike a deal. This bear is sleeping. This bear can make very good dinner for me. So all you have to do is to just push this bear down. And then he'll fall down, and then I'll kill him, and I'll eat him, and I'll be fully satisfied, and I promise you, I won't harm you. So you'll go away free, you'll have your freedom, you can go back to your home, and I'll also be satisfied. So what do you think the human being did? He pushed the bear. Now as the bear fell down, fortunately for him, he managed to hold on to a branch because he was sitting on a branch that was quite high. And as he fell down, he caught hold of a branch that was lower. So he managed to save himself. And he sat on the branch and again went up. This time the tiger looked back at the bear and said, "Just see how these human beings are, how they backstab you, how they betray you, what kind of traitors they are. See, you gave him shelter, you were refusing to push him down, but when I suggested this, without a second thought, he just pushed you down. So now at least, my dear friend, we are both animals, we are brothers in the forest. At least now you can push him down." The bear said, "No. Just because someone has done evil to me, it does not mean that I should do evil to him. He has taken shelter. It is my principle that when someone comes to my shelter, then I cannot betray him. I should not return evil for evil." So Sita told the story to Hanuman and said, "These ladies, these ogresses, they tormented me, but they were under the instructions of their master, Ravana, therefore they did that. But as far as I am concerned, why should I return evil for evil? Now, devoid of their master, they are seeking my protection. I cannot harm them. So Hanuman was touched to hear this. And he went back and gave the message to Lord Ram, who eventually came and took Sita away. So there are lessons to learn. What kind of lofty morals and values are these? What kind of principles, which is probably unthinkable today, in this day and age? Are these too distant for us to even think about? Are they too impractical or unrealistic for us to even bother about? Not really. We can get the spirit of such instructions if we look at the spirit of it and we adopt them in our life. The spirit of these instructions is something that can be implemented according to time, place and circumstances in different ways. I'll give you another example. There were two farmers. One farmer sold his land to the other. And the deal was only about the land. The second farmer, after having bought the land, was tilling the land. And one day, when he was tilling the land, his plow struck something hard. When he dug, he found, lo and behold, that there was a big treasure chest, a big, huge box containing a vast amount of diamonds and precious stones. So now, what would a modern farmer or a modern person of this day and age have done? Most likely, he would have kept it for himself. But this man, he took the treasure chest and went to the person from whom he had purchased the land and told him, look, I found this in the land that I bought from you, so please take this treasure chest. Now, even if it did happen today, what would the person who received the treasure chest say? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for giving it to me. He would have taken it. But this man said, well, actually, I sold the land to you. And whatever is within the land is also yours. So now that you found the treasure chest, it's your good luck and my bad luck. So you should keep the treasure chest. I don't deserve it. I don't need it. It's not right for me to take it. Then the other farmer replied, he said, but look, my friend, I only purchased the land from you. I didn't purchase the treasure from you. And then this went back and forth. Now this kind of morals and this kind of ethics is very hard to come across these days. But can you imagine the kind of life and the kind of relationships people had when such values prevailed in those days? Of course, incidentally, I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe there is some law that says that anything that is a certain number of feet below the ground belongs to the government. I don't know, maybe some environmental law. Those of you who specialize in that may know something. So unless you take some special permission from this mining or something. But if you're a farmer and you have some land, you can go only beyond, only up to a certain number of feet, which is your property. Beyond that, it doesn't belong to you. So in any case, the principle of it is what I'm speaking about. So there are values and principles that are like a beacon light for us. Perhaps it is too unrealistic for us to bring them in lock, stock and barrel, do a cut and paste job and bring this into 2015. Perhaps that may or may not be possible, but at least we can get the spirit of it. And see what a wonderful life, what a wonderful civilization, what a wonderful society it would be if people lived a life according to such values. So what is it about these values that makes them so attractive to us, that makes for harmony? Because these values involve a certain degree of selflessness, a certain degree of sacrifice. You see, your civilized human life is not simply meant for selfish enjoyment. Real human life begins when one begins to live for the sake of others. A life that is lived selfishly only for one's own enjoyment is a life lived in vain. Principles and values is a life lived in vain. Traditions world over speak about societies where families live together with great affection, with great bonding, with great love, where societies also existed like that. People who had a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, where they helped each other so much, where there was not the spirit of selfishness that prevailed, but rather a spirit of selflessness. In that spirit of selflessness, all these other values come out. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna explains that real knowledge brings about these values automatically. What is real knowledge? Real knowledge comprises development of qualities like humility, mercy, compassion, restraint from unlimitedly enjoying worldly pleasures, taking interest in some spiritual development, and so on and so forth. So when one cultivates these values or these principles, then automatically this fosters more harmonious relationships amongst people. Otherwise, it just becomes an artificial creation, an artificial situation. When we speak of, for example, being honest and being truthful, we need to examine what it really means in depth. Let me give you another little example. Once upon a time, there were some bank robbers. There were 4 of them. They hatched a plot to rob a bank, and they were successful. They robbed the bank of 10 crore of rupees. They raised a hand.
So I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The ethical dilemma that you were talking about. So when you say that when a person goes ahead and does this, and therefore is being honest about the wrong that is committed, is that based on the assumption that humans are infallible? Because it is the thing that you said about ethical foundation, no ethical foundation to a truth that a person tells after committing a wrong. Is that based on the assumption of humans being infallible? Is
ethics based on a presumption of human infallibility? The ethics that we are speaking about is based on an ideal that understands the spiritual or the divine. So the ethics we are talking about is an ideal thing, which human beings should strive for. Yes, we are fallible, we are not perfect, but in our search for perfection, we need ideals. You see, there is a saying that a person is known by the ideals he keeps or she keeps. Suppose you ask someone, what do you want to do in life? I want to make money and I want to enjoy. So you know what that person's standard is, where that person is. Someone says, well, I just want to be a big person in the society. I just want to have my names in the newspaper. I want to be a famous personality. Okay, so you know that's where this person is at. Someone else is another aspiration. So you can judge a person according to that person's aspiration, what that person considers an ideal goal to reach, what that person wants to be. So the ethical systems that humanity has always devised, and in particular those ethical systems that are based upon a spiritual foundation, Such ethical systems are idealistic, but they are meant to drive fallible human beings. That there will be people who will be grossly unethical and immoral, and this is going to happen. And therefore such systems have to also evolve or indicate mechanisms for dealing with that. So there is a combination of idealism and realism. Yes?
We try to idealize profession. Like a philanthropist is a more ethical way of leading a person's life, and whereas a person who wants to take up a top job and make money is not that ethical as a philanthropist. Whereas I feel a person who wants to make money and does it ethically is also equally ethical as a social worker. So is that the assumption you're trying to make?
You are correct. Making money is not a crime. Being rich is not a crime. Neither is being poor a virtue in and of itself. The question is, what have you done to become rich? And even if you are poor, what do you aspire to do to become rich? So, being rich or being poor is not really the crux of the matter. The matter is, what are the values you have adopted in your life? What are the principles and ethics that you have in your life, whether you are poor or you are rich? If you are rich, how did you get there? And how are you using your wealth? That is the question. That will determine your consciousness and your value system. Right? So yes, being a social worker, one could be crooked. One could be a social worker for name and fame. One could be a social worker so one becomes famous so one can fight an election and become a politician. Or one may be a genuine social worker who is actually selflessly driven. One could be. Similarly, one could be a rich person who is crooked. One could be a rich person who is genuinely motivated, who wants to use his or her wealth in a good way. So yes, certainly, earning wealth is not a crime. But how you utilize it, that is the question. And what is your world view about wealth? Is that your goal in life? Do you think that money is honey? Is earning money and getting the fruit of that in terms of the worldly pleasures, is that your goal of life? Or is there something higher? These are the questions that need to be addressed. Good questions, thank you. Very thoughtful questions. Yes.
So you're still saying that somebody who earns wealth, even if they do so in an ethical social worker working for other people?
Okay, so your question is that if someone earns well, that person spending that well-earned money for himself or herself, less ethical than that of a social worker, or spending it on someone else. It depends. We all have our own needs. And how much do we really need? What are we driven by? What is the driving force behind our life? Is the fact that I want to spend my money so I can enjoy this world more and more, is that what is driving me? Or is it that I just want a basic decent quality of life so I can live with a fair degree of comfort, so I can do something higher in life? Is that what I'm aiming for? Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the goal of my life? Is the goal of my life simply to earn money and live a luxurious life? I'll give some in charity too, but then I want this swankiest of cars, and I want the latest gadgets, and I want the swankiest of houses, and I want all luxuries and comforts. So am I after that? To what degree am I doing that? It's a question of understanding our motivation, our intention, our philosophy of life. Why am I earning? Sometimes we ask people to come to spiritual programs and they say, well, I don't have time. So we ask them, why don't you have time? They say, because I'm working so hard. And ask them, why are you working so hard? They say, to earn money. And why are you earning money? To survive, to live. And then, why are you living? And sometimes people haven't thought about this. If you ask somebody the question, what is the goal of your life? To many people it seems like a surprising question. They've never thought about it. They've always thought about this in terms of some goal they want to do in their career or achieve a certain amount of money or pleasure or happiness or fame or prestige, but nothing beyond that. So spending for oneself is not a bad thing because we have legitimate requirements. But the question is, where do we draw the line? And that will depend on your value systems of what you want to do in life and what you have decided as the goal of your life. Then you will realize, I really don't need so much. I'm quite happy with just a decent house, a decent car, some decent savings so that I don't have trouble tomorrow. What else do I need in my life? Which is why people like Bill Gates, they're giving practically 99 or something like that, some 99% of their wealth in charity. Because what they realize, well, what am I going to do with it? And in any case, having so much of money in and of itself is not going to give us so much happiness. So these are the things we have to ask ourselves. Everyone has a legitimate requirement. You must certainly spend for that. What about the rest? That's the question. Yes?
What I understand from your answer is the standard for ethics universal or absolute, or is it a changing standard of ethics? Secondly, in relation to your first story about the spoken in support of a truth, it is as good as a truth. So how do we reconcile this contradiction about a lie in support of a truth? I mean, how do we reconcile a lie spoken if it is in support of a larger truth? That and the first is the standard of ethics.
Okay, so the first question, can you repeat the first question?
So what is the standard of ethics? Is it changing or is it universal absolute?
Okay, so the standard of ethics, to live in this world, we need, the situation of this world is that there are going to be relative situations. Sometimes you have to lie, sometimes you have to speak the truth, although the general principle is to speak the truth. But there are exceptional cases where a lie may be sometimes considered to be higher than speaking the truth. That's not the general norm, but these are extraordinary cases. So there are relative ethics in this world. One man's food, another man's poison. What's right for you may not be right for me. This only ends up creating some conflicts amongst people about good and bad. So that is the reason I refer to the spiritual foundation. The spiritual foundation is an eternal foundation, and it is based on certain eternal principles. And therefore there is an absolute standard too. And our relative ethics have to be seen with reference to that spiritual foundation, which is eternal. We should draw upon that. And as far as the second question about speaking a lie, as I mentioned, that is not the normally acceptable thing to do, and one should not use this or misuse this whimsically. These are very exceptional cases that bring out the exception proves the rule. Yes, it just shows the exceptions are also important sometimes. Yes? Okay.
So we talk about the ethics and I would try to link it with our discipline itself, which the debate which we often face in generally in law, that is law and ethics. So as you said that imagine a society, human society, where there are no rules, no ethics and humans are living as per their wish. So this dilemma that we often face, law and ethics. So as far as law is there, taking a utilitarian perspective about the society, that since law is there, it's maintaining the society. It will see what is wrong, what is right. At the same time, there might be ethics which might go against law. But so in that, if we see by utilitarian perspective, it's assumed by law that law will maintain society. There won't be an animalistic society or something like that. At the same time, is it necessary for me to follow ethics because the purpose of ethics is already taken care by law. So in this perspective, how do we see ethics then? Like, are ethics above are ethics above those laws?
So your question is about the interrelationship of laws formulated by the state vis-a-vis ethics. Yes? So when the laws are there, do we need ethics at all? Number one, laws that are formulated by the state are essentially a collective representation of what the society considers desirable and ethical. So it is a reflection of the ethical value systems of the society. So the laws, the lawmakers are supposed to reflect the values of the society, and then they make laws according to that. Yes? So therefore there is a connection there. However, the laws that are made are mostly on the relative platform. And because they are disconnected from the absolute platform of the spiritual platform, therefore they end up having all sorts of logical conundrums and contradictions. So laws are what they may be, but there are certain things that go far beyond the gross laws of the land. For example, is there any law in the country that says you must be kind to people? Is there any law that says you must always speak the truth? So there are many things that go beyond what the law books define. So it's a very complicated situation. But when we talk of ethics, we talk of something much more than law. The law of the land. We're talking of a higher law. There is a Chinese proverb, I think, which says that law is required for the common person. But for the evolved person, good conduct rules him. The person who's evolved spiritually doesn't need a law. He doesn't need legal systems to tell him what to do and what not to do. Because he's automatically controlled by his own spiritual evolution. So fear of the law is what drives the ordinary person. And that is necessary in this world because that is the lowest common denominator. But subtler, finer ethics are very important in society. A simple legal framework is not enough. Laws cannot answer everything. It is like the body without the soul. If you have laws without ethics, the very spirit of it will be lost. You can only, up to some extent, enforce things. But ultimately, it has to be a change coming internally, where people will voluntarily do things in such a way that the society will be very harmonious, where everybody will be driven towards working for the common well-being and harmony of everybody in the society. Okay? Yes?
So till that internal change comes, you have to depend on the law. So here's my question. So what if, when you say that the law reflects social morality, aren't we making an assumption that it is possible for the lawmakers to understand what the collective wants? With society and in between societies. But especially when you're telling us that this understanding of our ethics should be based on our traditions. These very traditions didn't consider dehumanizing of widows and sati to be morally abhorrent until very recently. So because there are varied perceptions of morality within and across societies, is it possible for the law to gauge what is the collective morality and make laws on that basis?
It's very difficult. Very difficult. And that is why we have so many problems. It is very hard, and there are many times contradictions, so your point is quite valid. It basically needs spiritually evolved people who can actually guide the society in a very sober way, with clear understanding of issues, with a very clear head. Laws can work only up to a point. Lawmakers are also, after all, fallible individuals. They will make and unmake laws. Today something is a law, tomorrow it's changed to something else. For lawmakers to capture the real mood of the society in terms of values and so on. So we can't totally depend on the lawmakers. Although as law-abiding citizens, we don't transgress any of the laws, but we should recognize the limitation.
Spirituality, would you include something like Kantian ethics? Like, are you necessarily kind of relating spirituality to the idea of God? Can I be spiritual in an atheistic agnostic way?
Spirituality. Now, unfortunately today, the very mention of the word God evokes all kinds of sentiments and feelings and thoughts in people's minds. And immediately there is the idea that something is sectarian, there is this religion or that religion. And to the degree that people are now very awkward to even speak on the topic lest they be misunderstood for something else. This is an unfortunate situation. Spirituality is definitely connected to God, provided we understand that God is not to be limited by narrow parochial distinctions of caste, creed, community, language, culture, and so on. If you understand God as the one supreme entity who is the source of everything, we are rising beyond the sectarian denominations of religious faiths and cultures of this world. When we talk of one supreme being, we are not talking of a Hindu God, a Muslim God, a Christian God, a Sikh God. We are talking of the supreme entity, period. And when we talk of spirituality, we are talking about our own essential spiritual nature as distinct from this perishable body of ours. And the connection that our divinity has, our spiritual being has, with that supreme entity. So when you have such a universal and non-sectarian and deep and genuine understanding of what spirituality is, which is what is your real nature, then everything becomes clear.
Here's the problem, right? So when we say that the sanction of the law is what makes us know what is right and what is wrong, under the paradigm that you are suggesting.
Not necessarily. I'm not saying that everything that the state decides to be the law is correct.
No, that's it.
But I'm saying as law-abiding citizens, we don't flout them. That's all.
So we don't flout them just because there is a law that says it. I think that is one of the reasons. That is a possibility for me as a law-abiding citizen. I follow particular laws because it is there. So the problem is, if I reach that self-actualized mode and I follow a particular form of ethics just because there is, just because there is a superior being, is it in a similar problem yet at a higher level? Therefore, shouldn't an understanding of ethics and morality, shouldn't an understanding of spirituality be independent of any idea of this God? An idea that just drives me internally without there being the need for a sanction, whether a law, sanction is law, or sanction is God.
You see, things cannot exist in vacuum. Things have to always have a reference. point, a frame of reference. So therefore, an absolute frame of reference for an ethical system that is to be enduring is a spiritual frame of reference. That is the point. Because the legal frame of reference keeps changing. No. Because as I mentioned earlier, the spiritual frame of reference is based upon certain eternal principles and values which never change. The application of those principles will change with time, place and circumstance. Depending on how the circumstances, you would apply those principles differently. But the principles never change, fundamentally. But laws made by the lawmakers will be constantly changing. Yes?
So what is the basis on which you are basing your spiritual framework? So where do you get the spiritual framework from? And how do you reconcile the fact that different religions will have different spiritual frameworks to begin with?
Good question. Where am I coming from? Where is my spiritual framework coming from? Yes, and you're also right that different religious faiths may appear to have different frameworks. But if you understand it in the way that I mentioned in the earlier answer, it is a vision or a conception of spirituality that transcends religious faiths, that transcends castes, creeds, communities, nationalities, and so on. All material designations are transcended by this universal spiritual conception of the one supreme entity who is eternal and who is the cause of all causes, who is our origin and the source of everything else, and of ourselves as spiritual beings who have an eternal connection with that supreme entity. When you understand it in these terms, then you can reconcile the apparent differences in details that may exist between the frameworks of different religious faiths. Are you following?
Yes, sir, but in that case, if this is defined by me in connection to this supposed spiritual entity, then what is going to end up happening is that all morality will end up being relative, because how do you judge an absolute morality which cannot be entity that is undefined?
Oh, it is defined, very much defined.
Where?
That is where, just like you have your law books, your Indian Penal Code, or the Income Tax Act and the Companies Act and so on and so forth. So every religious faith has their own codes which they prescribe. And these codes give us a set of values and ethics by which we ethics carefully. You will find that there are underlying common to be a common platform. And that is the common platform we are striving to talk about. For example, if everyone accepts that there is that one spiritual entity, you may call it by different names, according to the different cultures and lands that you have been raised in. But if you all accept that there is that one entity, that is a common point. In this way, of course, that may go beyond the scope of today's talk. But when you actually analyze it, you will see there is a whole series of commonalities by which you can build up a common framework, based on which the whole world can move together in a united way. And these principles are all common. Let us not get confused because of differences in language, differences of customs, differences of certain practices. They are there because we have been presented according to time, place and circumstance. But nevertheless, these common principles can be extracted very nicely and they are eternally valid. Yes? Yes, that is a fact. Okay, yes. The question is, can you be an atheist and be ethical at the same time? You can. You can be ethical, but ultimately, what is the foundation? Should it not eventually be like those 4 bank robbers who are honest amongst each other, but the fundamental underlying platform is a falsehood? So there is a kind of, at least that ethical behavior is good, is fine. But when one wants to go deeper, one must explore the matter further and understand that there is more to ethics than just certain superficial ways of dealing. We must be ethical in our superficial dealings, but there's also much more to it. We have to also explore the foundations of these things. Yes? Okay, yeah.
So, doesn't the whole battle of Mahabharata go against the principle of being good to a person who... The battle of Mahabharata was essentially a battle of treachery and deceit, and Krishna, with due regards, was the master of this very deceit and treachery. It is evident from how he killed Duryodhana. So the rules of the battle did not permit him to use weapons after sunset. So he, using his celestial and magical powers, overshadowed the sun and made Duryodhana come out of water, who had taken refuge in water. And moreover, if I am being good to a person who has done harm to me or anybody for that matter, doesn't it show a weakness on my part? Doesn't it show that I am weak enough to not stand for something that is right?
Good. Good question, very thoughtful. And I'm also happy you seem to have read the Mahabharata, at least the main storyline. You see, we have to go a little deeper there. We have to see also the context of who Krishna is and why Krishna does things the way he does, or why he did things the way he did. So if we are going to speak about why Krishna did certain things in the Mahabharata, you'll also have to accept the other things that Krishna said or did in the Mahabharata. Then you'd have to take a very holistic and comprehensive view of Krishna in order to answer that question. So you'll also have to understand what he said in the Bhagavad-Gita. You'll also have to understand what is said about Krishna in the other portions of the Mahabharata, and understand what his position is and why he did what he did. Now, for each of the things behind what Krishna did, yes, it's not immediately easy to understand. But when one understands who he is and what his purposes are, then we understand. In the Bhagavad-Gita, for example, we understand Krishna's supreme nature as the supreme entity. And he declares that he descends in this world from time to time to establish dharma, righteousness, and to also destroy the miscreants. So this is his plan. He descends here to diminish the burden of the earth. So the whole battle is a plan that is worked out for this purpose, to diminish the burden. The different techniques and ways are just instrumentalities by which he may effect his purpose. So when we go into details of understanding why somebody does something, we must also understand the background of who he is and what is his position. Then we can understand the actions also. Then everything gets reconciled very nicely. If there is some injustice of this sort going on, it is your duty to speak up and to act. Yes, that you must do. But the question is, there are different situations. It is not always. Even in a situation like this, there are many flavors of that situation. And what one could do and what one should do in a given situation, again, is a very hypothetical thing. Therefore, dharma is not easy to understand. One has to know the basic principles, and then depending on the complexities of the present situation, one has to come to a conclusion. Just like in the case of that sage Kaushik, he chose to say the truth. Yes, but perhaps somebody else would have put a higher premium on saving the lives of the people and said a lie in order to save their lives. Yeah, let's give somebody else a chance. Yeah.
You said it's ethically okay for me to get a high-paying job and make a lot of money as long as I'm ethical to taking that job. But what if my job itself exists because random lawyers have created an artificial barrier which restricts my competition? And moreover, what if I get this job because I'm in a college which is exclusive and restricts my competition, and it's on an economic basis, like people can't afford to get the resources to get into this college itself? Am I still being ethical?
You see, then it's a question of how you live your life, for what you live your life, and how you spend your money. You are where you are, you have a decent job, maybe a high-paying job, and you use it well. You use it to increase a sense of harmony and well-being, keeping in light the spiritual foundation that we have spoken about. There is nothing wrong with that. According to your situation, your circumstances, you are in a position where your parents could pay the fees for you to come here. You appeared for an entrance examination, I presume, and you passed it and you came here. For the entrance examination, there were many other people who could have applied, whether they were poor or rich. Perhaps some didn't make it. So you applied, you got admission, you work hard, you pass out, get a good job, but if you remain ethical, you remain in spiritual consciousness, utilize the fruits of your actions to increase the harmony rather than in a destructive way, then there is nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong in earning. There is nothing wrong in spending. It's only a question of how and why you do these things. Yes?
So, in response to Prabhu's question, you said that when we are seeing how Krishna manipulated certain circumstances, you must see. So, sir, does that mean that? What you're trying to say by what do you mean by saying this is that the ends necessarily justify the means. So, if the end is ethical, the means will not matter.
Depends.
Exactly.
Does the end justify the means? Again, it depends. If there's times when, yes indeed it would. There are times when that principle could be invoked. And there are times when the means may be of such a nature that perhaps they don't. So again, you have to see from case-to-case situation. But let's take in the case of the sage Kaushik. What would you have done? Perhaps you would have preferred to say a lie. Because you decided that telling a lie is better. Because saving the lives of these innocent people is more important than me keeping my vow to speak the truth. Right? But in some other case, perhaps, you may not have done that. So it depends. That is where our spiritual intelligence comes in as to how we are going to apply these principles on a case-to-case basis. Right? Yes?
So this case-to-case basis is decided by saying that protect a greater good. Is that what we have to take into account while deciding?
Okay, that's a good point. That if I do something bad in order to effect a larger good, is it valid? The general rule is to do good, to bring good. But these are rare cases, are exceptional cases that we are all confronted with. And that is called the ethical dilemma. You have two moral obligations, and both are conflicting. And if you do one, you violate the other. So therefore, in such situations, you have to take a call. It is not that doing bad for achieving the good is a general rule. No. The general rule is to do good. Even your action should be good for a good end. But just these exceptional cases that come up where you have to actually make a choice. Yes. Yes.
So, how do you make, how do you live ethically? How do you make money ethically? Because as a lawyer,
But I don't know.
no, because as a lawyer,
Good question. You stumped me there.
as a lawyer, I'd see my dharma as dealing with the law well and making a good case for my client. And if I'm defending a criminal, what does that make me? Ethical or not?
Well, then how does your profession consider it? That if you are supposed to defend a criminal, you know he's a criminal perhaps, but it's just that it's not established in the court of law yet. And you do your best to defend that criminal. So is it ethical for you or not? As far as the legal profession is concerned, yes, it's ethical, provided you follow the framework that is given. You don't go beyond a certain point. So as far as your profession is concerned, that's your dharma as a lawyer. If you are within that framework and you have to give him a chance to defend himself, and he is innocent till he's proved guilty, so you have to give him a fair chance. Even though you may think he's done it, but there's always a slim chance he hasn't done it. So in order to rule that out and to establish unequivocally that he is a criminal, so you have to do your duty as a lawyer. But there will of course be some riders to that. There will be some tricky points, some tricky situations where you may have to think deeply about it. But this is the general answer I would give.
But isn't that a bit hypocritical? I wouldn't go out and commit a crime, but I'm happy helping someone who has. Because he's
Yes, but you see, you don't know for sure what is actually the motivation behind his crime and whether he has actually done it or not. The principle of natural justice is that you have to give a person a chance to defend himself.
So what if the court has established that he has committed the crime, but that's still involved in negotiations and plea bargaining or something like that? All sorts of situations that are
Also,
Yes.
this is in a way serving a higher good, which is that of upholding the rule of law, not more rule. Because tomorrow if someone alleges that you are a criminal, you are not a criminal, just because someone alleges you are a criminal. So that in a way is upholding rule of law. So you are defending someone in spite of knowing that he is a criminal. You are upholding some positive law in that sense. So I think it serves a greater good. It might in one instance not work against your ethical values, but it is serving a greater good.
So your colleague is giving you an answer. It also helps to move towards the higher good. So anyway, these are some of the issues that you really need to look into. Again, no black and white answer can be given. A lot depends on the particular case involved. So you have to study with these principles in mind. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the nice question.
His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami ji, Srimati Veena Krishnan, Amrita Ahuja, and Vikram Balleswas. Indeed, it was a feast for us. It was an exudation of erudition from our Swamiji. I promise him to take this forward in our discussion in our ancient law class, which I take on Thursdays and Fridays. Indeed, I was accusing him for not bringing you tomorrow evening, and particular class is devoted wholly for this purpose. We have an endowment in our university wherein they asked us to discuss the ethical values and philosophy of ancient India. So we are having in our curriculum and in our agenda certain aspects of ancient culture and all these things. My dear student, I teach this class. We can continue our discussion tomorrow as well, and I take the class. What I should tell you is that Atma Buddhi Sukham Chaiva Guru Buddhi Sheshataha is the principle of our ancient India. Even if you are capable of making a judgment or discernment on your own, whenever there is expertise and experience of the teacher that is available, it is better to take that one. Today is that day wherein we have derived many suggestions relating to the values of the society, most of our ancient society. We should be thankful to our Swamiji. I used to tell one thing. When you say Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo, Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha, it doesn't mean that our teacher is standing with four arms and all these arms and all these things. It is not like that. He is Guru Brahma because he creates in you the urge for the knowledge, pursuit of knowledge. He is Vishnu, he sustains that motivation throughout the process of learning. And he is Shiva because he shows the ultimate end of the knowledge. That is why he is called Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva, Maheshwara. And then a teacher is equated, rather, personification of knowledge. Kevalam Jnanamurti, that is the saying. And one must understand that we did not inherit a culture wherein teacher is in a position to dominate the will of the other and undue influence is not our philosophy. Sahanavatu Sahano Gunaktu Sahaviryam Karavai. They are considered to be the partners in the process of learning. And as he rightly pointed out, the dilemmas of dharma, they are very, very in Mahabharata and in Ramayana what you should do. Because Rama is considered to be personification of dharma himself. Rama Vigraham Dharmaha, that is the thing. Whatever he said, whatever he did was considered to be dharma. But unlike that, in Mahabharata, you will find that these conflicts of various principles of dharma, he has given you one or two examples. Throughout Mahabharata, you will find number of these conflicts. So if you have urge for that, you can learn through the scriptures, you can learn through Vedic literature, you can start your learning from Rita, and dharma you can continue. And he has given very good examples in order to bring the point how we should go about all these things. We are highly grateful to him and for bringing it onto your campus. Of course it is their duty, they being the students in the year 1999. So, wonderful gift you have given to your juniors. We are thankful to you, and we are also thankful to our SBA President and Vice President. Thank you one and all.